Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. My name is Françoise and today's episode is about one of the most important tools that I discovered on my fertility journey to find my way back to a place of ease, of flow, of conceiving from a place of love, trust and surrender. And that sounds almost impossible, right? If you've been on the fertility journey for a while, it can be just a very stressful journey. And it's something I've discussed on the podcast a lot, that fertility issues, fertility challenges, they create a chronic state of stress in your body, a chronic state of nervous system dysregulation. It's a bit of a fashion word these days, but it is so crucial for understanding why you're feeling like you do right now. It's because there's this constant, there's fears being triggered, there's a loss of control, and it's all very scary, and your system just it reacts to that. So what I discovered on my journey is that working with abundance, with a feeling of abundance, helped me to shift from that state of scarcity to feeling much more open, feeling like I could go with the journey. It was such a powerful practice, and now with all the work I'm doing on the nervous system, I realize why that's so interesting. I had my own journey. I know I developed certain tools that work for me, and now I'm reading up on the mechanisms behind them, and I can actually explain why they work. So, as I mentioned, when the fertility journey takes time, many women become stuck in a chronic state of dysregulation. A fear that I mention a lot on the podcast is that fear of, what if this never happens for me? What if I grow old and my partner dies? Who will take care of me? What if I'm the only person who this doesn't work for? That's in itself, it's a very existential fear. So it's completely normal that creates stress in your system. The only thing is, what do you do with that stress? I think that's where many women get sort of annoyed, because it feels like you don't have a choice. But there are certain things that you can do to make this easier. So that's what we'll discuss today. But there's obviously other stresses as well. The treatment process itself can be really stressful. Getting pregnancy announcements from friends or other people. There's a lot for you to process. And what happens, or what I see happen in my clients, is that overall, you can say there's two different states of nervous system dysregulation. So one thing you may recognize is that you go into fight or flight mode. And fight mode is often characterized by trying to do everything possible to control the outcome. So that's where you go online, you start searching protocols, researching protocols, you start looking at supplements, at diets. You're just trying to do everything that you can to fix yourself. When you're in that fixing mode, you're in fight mode, basically. You can also be in flight mode. That's when you're constantly shifting protocols, so you feel like nothing really works. You just want to get away from what you're doing. That's flight mode. And then when that fertility journey goes on for a while, you can move even deeper from that fight or flight level into complete collapse. So that's where exhaustion sets in, despair, depression, like not wanting to do anything anymore. That's not just a mental state, that is a physical response to the stress. And it's your body's most basic stress response, where it just says, I'll play dead, basically. I'll conserve energy because this is taking so much from me. I have to conserve all the energy that I've got. So maybe you recognize one of these states and know, that's what I really want to stress, is know that there are things that you can do to move out of them. The fertility journey is also often a mirror for deeper wounds. So when these things happen, they are so intense, not just because the fertility journey is intense, but because they trigger deeper wounds. One example I often use is that of perfectionism. So the fight response, the wanting to control everything, to do, everything that you can, that's often a form of perfectionism kicks in. Usually that's linked to deeper childhood wounds, children who had to achieve love and recognition from their parents, who had the feeling that they were only loved if they performed really well. It's when your worthiness is tied to your achievements. And that's very common in our society, because we're taught that, success is what defines you as a person. So this is a wound in and of itself, the feeling that you are not enough, that you need to achieve something to be able to be worthy, or to be worthy as a person. And then in the fertility journey, this becomes this whole, I need to do everything that I can. I need to be on my best behavior, because that's the only way in which this will work. So looking at the root of these patterns, that's a crucial thing when it comes to nervous system work. You want to look at those deeper wounds that are being triggered and work with them, and realize that you are safe, that those feelings, those wounds are not... they are real, but the fears that are there, the underlying beliefs that you hold, it's about learning to shift those. One thing you can do with the nervous system is look at those deeper wounds, but while you're doing that, because that can take, a while, there's also practical things that you can do to shift states. So if you're stuck, if you recognize, okay, I'm stuck in a state of dysregulation, there are things that you can do to help yourself get back to a feeling of safety. Because in the end, that is what nervous system dysregulation is. It's your system thinking that you're not safe, that all of the things that are happening to you on your fertility journey give your body the signal it's unsafe. This is not a safe space that I'm in right now. There are many, many things that you can do to shift from that fight or flight response, or from that complete collapse response, to a feeling of safety and ease again. Breath work, movement, relaxation, nervous system, those are all nervous system tools. But for me, one of the biggest shifts I made was around really recognizing the feeling of scarcity in my body. Because in that state of not getting pregnant, wanting to get pregnant and it not happening, I realized I had developed that intense feeling of scarcity. I was so constricted. It was like, what if this never happens? There was that fear. So even when I mention this now, I feel my body just tightening and tensing, and all my muscles are constricting. And that is what scarcity does, is it creates that is a sense of insafety, right? When your body starts to, I almost want to hug myself. I make myself really small when I feel that feeling of scarcity. That's a very physical sensation. So it is not just a mindset, it's something you feel at a visceral level. And I realized I need to cultivate a sense of expansion and abundance, because I cannot live in this state of constant constriction. Now, I knew straight away that this wasn't about just forcing myself to feel grateful about all the good things that were there in my life, or trying to shift my mindset about children. It was much more about developing a practice where I could experience abundance. Because I don't really believe in toxic positivity, basically. I don't believe in forcing yourself to feel different than you do. So this wasn't about forcing myself to feel different. It was about allowing myself to experiment different ways of being. That sounds very vague, but I'm going to explain to you how I did this. So what I did is I looked at my life and I asked myself, where do I have something in my life that I can share with others? And 3 things came to mind for me. The first was money. Now, I'm not a very rich person, but I did have a decent job. I was earning some money. And basically, I was saving all my money. So I did have a scarcity mindset around money that goes back to my childhood. My mother especially was always very frugal. So I lived on a very tight budget as a student, and I just kept living on that budget. After I got my good job, I've been able to save, but still I felt like I wasn't allowed to spend any money. I realized at that point that I wanted to, rather than money just stopping with me, that's what I was doing. I was just letting that money flow into me, and then I was putting it all in my bank account and holding on to it there. So again, there's a tightness there, wanting to hold on to something. So I felt, I want money. That was my sort of the intention I set, as money flows through me. Rather than it stopping with me, it flows through me. And I decided, okay, what I can do with the money is just donate to a cause that I feel very strongly about. I was working with refugees at the time as a conflict researcher, and refugees, the stories I read, the people I talked to, the experiences they shared, they're some of the most horrific ones I've come across in my entire life. I worked in Africa and Libya, Mali, Niger, so those were places of transit where horrible things happen to people. So I felt, okay, I'm already trying to help these people through my job, but I can also just very practically donate money to causes where I know that money goes directly to the people who need it. There was one cause I worked with who, I think they just donated strollers to moms, like refugee mothers, so that they could carry their children as they were, en route. Or they could push them. They didn't have to carry them all the time. So, of course, this is a very personal decision. Like, if you have enough money, if you actually have money to share, if you feel that this is something where you can feel into that feeling of abundance. But for me, that worked really well. So I started donating 10% of my income just to rewire my nervous system's relationship with money, getting into that feeling that it's safe for money to flow through me. Like, the world doesn't end if I donate 10% of my income, and I can still buy my groceries. And it's also about every month taking that moment to really, like, I didn't do an automatic transfer. I made sure that I transferred that money every month so I could feel, okay, this is abundance. This is my abundance that now gets to flow to other people. A second area where I thought I could give, or, where you might possibly give to others or feel abundance, is time. So if you have time to volunteer, that's a great way to start feeling abundance. Like, I have so much time, I can give some of it away. But in my case, I had none to give, really. I had a more than full-time job. I was in fertility treatments. I was exhausted a lot of the time. So time wasn't something I could give. And I also realized, like, forcing myself to take even more on my plate because of that idea that I need to feel abundance, right? That's not going to do the trick. So I said, okay, I can give money, I can give time. But there was a third area where I felt I could give, and that was space. I looked at my home and I realized we have a beautiful home, but it's too big for the two of us. And it would be great if we have children, but right now we have a couple of rooms that just sit here empty. And working in the field of refugees, as I did, I knew that there were a lot of refugees in reception centers in the Netherlands, and those are not really nice places. So I knew there were a couple of programs that placed refugees in people's homes for a couple of months, just to bridge the time between them getting their status cleared and then them finding a home. So that's what I signed up. Of course, I had to discuss this with my husband, but we signed up for that program. And in the end, we ended up welcoming 2 refugees in our home. First, there was a young boy from Yemen, and he only stayed for a short time because he got his own housing fairly quickly after that. But he did become like a very good friend. I remember going shopping with him for furniture for his house, which was amazing. He got some sort of allowance from the government, or a loan so he was just in the shop going crazy. Yeah, getting to buy furniture for his own place was really nice. And then afterwards we had a middle-aged man from Syria who stayed, I think it was about 3 or 4 months. And then he got his own place as well, so we helped him set up his home there. What I always tell people is that he cooked me the most delicious meals almost every day. And I guess that was his way of, he didn't have money or time, but he didn't have money, but he could share his abundance by cooking for me. So that was a great deal, especially because I actually ended up falling pregnant. So that was really, and I'm not saying, this is what you need to do to get pregnant. The timing was perfect because I was there living my abundance. And in that practice, I got so much back when I actually needed it, when I didn't have the energy to cook and he was there in our home to take care of me. I get emotional when I say this. That was really, really special. It was abundance coming full circle. So, what happens with practicing abundance is that it really did make a difference. It was a way for me to shift my attention from that feeling of scarcity, of not getting what I wanted, to really feeling that there was so much that I could share. It opened me up. It created new experiences. It created really valuable connections. And that's the interesting thing I know now from my nervous system work. That's what you need actually to move from a state of dysregulation to a state of safety, and we call that the ventral vagal state. That's the technical term. But that's the state where you feel safe, where you feel connected to other people. And the interesting thing is that once you travel from one state to the other, the way you experience life, it actually changes. So, for example, when you're stuck in that fight or flight state, the wanting to control, doing everything you can, there are things that happen because of the stress. The way you interpret life changes. So even like the tones that your ears pick up, they change because your ears become more primed towards danger. The same with your vision, like you start to interpret facial expressions more negatively. So even if someone gives you a neutral stare, you will think it's an angry stare because you're just so primed to seeing danger everywhere. That's what happens in your system. And then when you move to that state of safety, those things change. So you'll feel more at ease because your system is more at ease. And then it's like a positive reinforcement loop. So for me, connecting with that feeling of abundance, making those meaningful connections with other people, it brought me back to a state of safety. And there I could also start experience life as something that was easier. It really reinforced each other. And I don't want to say you need to follow my blueprint. This is what worked for me. But I do want to invite you to think about where you could introduce more abundance in your own life. So there are a couple of areas that I mentioned: time, money, and space. I think those are 3 really good places to start, just to see if any of those areas are places where you actually feel abundant, or where you could practice abundance and use that to connect to that abundance, to connect to other people. This might be triggering, but now that I'm a mom of small children, like one of the biggest gifts someone could give me is to come over and take care of my kids for a day or a night. So see, maybe you feel you're in that scarcity mindset and you are starting to avoid friends with kids. It can be an experiment. Just say, okay, what happens if I volunteer to take care of them for a day? That will be the biggest gift that you can give your friend. And then see what happens when you're with the kids. And if it's super triggering and it leaves you feeling completely drained because it confronts you with what you want so badly, then you know, okay, this isn't a strategy for me. But maybe you will feel, okay, I'm actually getting something out of this. This is helping me connect to what might be possible for us. And it's so good for me to see my friend being able to help my friend. But like I said, there's no blueprint. So take this really as an experiment and see what might be possible for you. If this speaks to you, I also want to invite you into something special. I'm organizing a course called Nourished. It will start in March. Last year, I launched Nourished as a meditation bundle. So those were 10 guided practices that you could use to conceive from a place of love, trust, and surrender. What I realized this year is I want to almost turn it into a challenge, because it's one thing to give you the meditations, but really developing a practice, it takes time, it takes perseverance, and it also takes a bit of accountability. So I thought I'd turn it into a 10-week program with sort of a challenge component there. I'll add probably 3 live 90-minute sessions where we can set intentions, where we can build a community with the other participants. And then there will be sort of weekly challenges or assignments that you can use together with the guided practices to help you shift into that nourished, expansive state. So there are a couple of practices that focus on feeling nourished in your body, a couple of practices that focus on feeling nourished in your heart space. So that's really about also working through some of those deeper wounds that you may have that maybe are being triggered by the fertility journey. And there's also a couple of practices focused on connecting to your intuition, your higher guidance, really helping you find or take next steps on your fertility journey, not from a place of fear, but from a deep knowing that this is what is right for you right now. I'll probably also add like a WhatsApp group or a Telegram group. So there's the live sessions where we can jointly work through some of these things. And then in between, there's the group where you can also turn to for ongoing support and motivation. And the focus is really about helping you reconnect with the most nourished version of yourself. So the version of you that is in contact with abundance, with joy, and with ease. So if you're interested, you can go to the landing page that I created last year, thatfertilefeeling.com/nourished. And you can just leave your email address there. There's some information about the practices, but not about this whole program yet. But if you leave your email address there, I will send you an update once everything's ready. And people on the wait list, so people who sign up on that page, they also get a discount. I think it's 10 or 20%. I have to see. It's always good to get the early bird. So, thank you for tuning in this week. What I want to leave you with this week is that abundance can really be a crucial tool to help you regulate your nervous system, to find your way back to a place of softness, to step out of that feeling of scarcity, constant feeling of scarcity and fear, and really start experiencing the world again from a softer place, a place where that's less constricted, where you feel more connected to other people. And that would be my reflection, or for you, where could you practice abundance this week? And it would be great if you can also comment on this episode and let me know where you want to practice abundance this week, so that we can create a source of inspiration for each other. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you have a wonderful week. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at thatfertilefeeling, or email me at francoise@thatfertilefeeling.com. I always love to hear from you, and I always get back to you, and hope to see you back in 2 weeks' time. Bye bye.